Thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica Podcast. I am Mustafa Sharif, an urban planner, and you're more than welcome to join my big journey of exploring the making of smarter and more livable cities. Please don't forget to follow Urbanistica on the different social media platforms, and also let's connect on LinkedIn. Big thanks to Urbanistica podcast partner AFRY. AFRY is an international engineering and design company providing sustainable solutions in the fields of energy, industry, and infrastructure. Are you ready for a new episode? Let's go for it. Today we have a new episode and we have an amazing storyteller. I have the pleasure to welcome you, Amanda, to Urbanistica Podcast. Hello and welcome.
Thank you so much, Mustafa. I'm so excited to be here.
Finally, we managed to book a time.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. It's early morning here in Toronto, and I got to walk to the office when the streets were really quiet. And it was a lovely walk into the office today.
Amazing. How is it going now? Is a lot of project activities to do, or?
Yeah, we have a lot of projects going on, similar to I think how many folks are transitioning coming out of the pandemic. Where there's a lot more interest in doing on the ground place-based projects and community engagement, which is great because I love that stuff. I love meeting new people. I love being face to face with folks, making eye contact, not just through a screen.
So true.
That's what really motivates me. And so, yeah, it's been busy, but a good busy. We're happy to be back on the ground doing things.
Yeah. So, Amanda, let's start with you. You are our storyteller. How would you like to introduce yourself to our listener?
Oh, what a great question. I'm Amanda O'Rourke. I am the executive director of 880 Cities, which is a nonprofit organization based in Toronto. And I'm a mother and an urban planner. And I think another word I would use to describe myself is an eternal optimist.
Tell us more about your passion.
Well, I'm really passionate about cities, which is a good thing because of the work I do in the title of 880 Cities. I'm really passionate about sustainability. I started sort of in my really early days interested in climate activism and social justice activism. And so I'm very lucky that I get to do the work that I do, combining these interests in sustainability and quality of life and equity. So I have a lot of passions. I'm also really passionate about coffee and food.
And a specific type of food, like from a specific country or region or anything?
All of it, all different kinds of food, but I do really love highly spiced food.
Really?
I'm a lover of spicy food.
Cool. So, Amanda, give us a background about the 880 cities, and how did you became the executive director? So how was the two stories come together?
Yeah, it's great. The 880 Cities was founded by Gil Peñalosa. And so for listeners who might not know who Gil is, Gil started his city building career in the late 1990s in Bogota, in Colombia, where he was Parks Commissioner. And he led a very impressive, along with many others, of course, it led a really impressive transformation of public spaces and sustainable mobility in the city at that time.
Yeah.
And later, when he immigrated to Canada, he moved to Canada. And he was inspired, I think, by this work that he did in Bogota, how public space could be a driver for improving social equity. And that is really the spark of how 880 Cities was founded. back
Mm.
in 2005. And in 2000, so it was really just an organization on paper, and it was actually called Walk and Bike for Life at the very
Okay.
beginning.
Yeah.
And then I met Gil in 2007, sort of fresh out of my master's degree in university. We clicked really well, have since then, working together for 17 years. And, I started as a project manager, and just started doing work on sort of trying to change the conversation on the importance of walkability
Mm.
and cycling and public space, and really trying to elevate the conversation. And I was together, we rebranded. I really thought that Walk and Bike for Life was not really
Mm.
what we were about, and we came up with this concept of 880 cities, which basically the idea is that if you build a city that's great for an 8-year-old and an 80-year-old, you build a better city for everyone. So
Mm.
we really wanted this concept. We thought that this concept really articulated better our focus as an organization, which is not just about walking and cycling in public space. It's really about what kind of cities we want and
Yeah.
who are our cities for and who are our cities serving and who's not and who's being left behind.
Mm. Interesting. And like this strategy or concept about 880, is it like is it just like a kind of concept, or no? It's like a more proven that if you would plan and design a city for an 8 years old kid, it will function for an 80 years old person. Can
Yeah,
you give us some like examples?
sure. Yeah, it's really kind of like a guiding concept to
Mm.
sort of get us started in framing a conversation about city building. So, we think it's a simple but powerful idea that can really, I think, is quite accessible to folks who maybe would not self identify as an urbanist
Mm.
or as a city planner or as someone who's interested in urban issues or placemaking. But it's a way, it's an entry point, and we think it's quite an effective entry point to sort of broaden thinking about city building. And the reason that the 8 and 80, we chose that is that we have been really planning our cities thinking a lot more about moving cars, especially in North America, and less
Yeah.
about the health and happiness of people at the core. And when you think of the 8-year-old and the 80-year-old sort of navigating the city, we know that this very car centric planning paradigm has had a
Mm.
disproportionately negative impact on children and older adults and their right to be mobile in the city, to
Yeah.
move through space, their right to public space, to be, safe and comfortable in public space, and also the right to participate. And then I think, as we've worked, the concept has evolved. Aging is a universal human experience. We can all
Yeah.
think of an 8-year-old and an 80-year-old,
Mm.
but we of course also acknowledge and understand that your race, your gender, your
Yeah.
social location, these all intersect
Mm.
and impact how we navigate public space and how we navigate our cities. So it's the 880 plus,
Yeah.
but I think the 880 really is a universally, people can kind of get it right away, and
Yeah.
that's like
Yeah.
our in. And once we get people there, we can have these bigger conversations.
Exactly. The next step. So,
Yeah.
so like it's not something like really, really specific. You more wants to refer like to the children or newly kids, and then the elderly group of people, like to compare between them. So it doesn't matter like if I say 770, maybe.
Exactly, exactly.
It's
People
more,
often
yeah.
ask, Amanda, what about the 90-year-olds? What about the 3-month-olds? Of course. Yeah, we
Yeah,
want
it's
a
like
city for everyone. The 880s is catchy,
Yeah,
and
exactly. It's easy
it's
also
an
to
opening.
say, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, so tell me, like, how big is the organization in terms of people working in the team?
Yeah, we are a small but mighty team. We are basically 8 full-time staff,
Also 8.
and 8, yeah, not on purpose. We've
Okay.
often fluctuated between 8 and 10, sometimes getting as big as,
Yeah.
15 for certain
Wow.
projects,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
generally, we've stayed small over the
Mm.
17 years, but that's been very intentional, because we do a lot of our work through partnerships. And so and I imagine similar to you, when you're working in communities,
Yeah.
we rely very much on doing work through local partnerships,
Yeah.
both on the very hyper local level, but
Mm.
also we do partnerships with big international organizations
Mm.
like the WHO or ICLEI in terms of like more broadly disseminating or
Yeah.
communication. So we like being small. We like it that way.
Mm.
We think that we're more effective, and uh, it works better with our approach in terms of collaboration and partnership.
Yeah. And the 8 people you have in the team now, what kind of expertise they have? Are they like planners, architects?
Yeah, we have a mix, urban planners, communication specialists,
Mm.
folks who've done sort of urban studies or community development, um, some with urban design background, a real mix. I do think that there's a quite a and we've had designers and architects come as well through our team. So usually it's someone with some of the um, I think what unites us is often like this really interest in spatial planning and public space,
Yeah.
but different entryways
Mm.
into how people sort of support our approach, which is very much through community-led,
Yeah.
place-based efforts.
Mm. Amanda, tell us more. Like, give us some inspiration from project you work with. Like, give us examples of project you work with.
Sure, yeah. We've done a lot of sort of place-based transformations and activations. So we work on very we could transform an underused laneway into a vibrant public space with
Mm.
art and a night market. We just did that here last summer, coming out of COVID, with a city close to Toronto and Brampton. That was a really great project that we got to work with artists to transform the laneway in terms of like a wonderful mural, but
Mm.
also through activations through community partnerships. So partnering with the Alzheimer's Society and artists to do activations. We heard um, from community members, and it's always an engaged approach that we
Yeah.
take, um, that downtown Brampton is a very diverse city, but a lot of folks from the South Asian community and from the Black community really articulated that it felt very much like a white space. It didn't feel like
Ah.
a space that
Mm. Mm.
represented their cultural identity. And so one of the things that we piloted was a night market. It was very successful. So this is a great example of how we work in terms of we bring together the local businesses. So there's a business improvement district or business improvement association, as well as a municipality,
Mm.
and we worked with them on a program to transform the laneway. We measured the sort of public activity in the laneway beforehand and during the
Ah.
activation.
Yeah.
We talked to folks about how they felt in the space before and during the activation, and then that program and report that we just completed is basically going to help guide future investment in placemaking in the downtown.
Yeah.
So that's one example. We've done lots of projects like that, but that's a really relevant one
Mm.
that we just finished. But we do a lot of these sort of tactical, action oriented
Mm.
projects, and taking action is, in our mind, one of the highest forms of engagement. So we can
Of
talk,
course.
but there has to be a certain point where you're going to
Yeah.
do
Do
something.
actions exactly. But like this project that you mentioned now, who was the client who reached out to you?
Yeah, this was the federal government of Canada issued actually which is the first time they've ever done that from my understanding.
Mm,
And it was part of a COVID recovery package and part of an economic development from the economic development perspective.
mm,
Downtowns really suffered during COVID,
yeah.
and they released some funding
Mm,
for partnerships like the ones that we initiated with the BIA and the city to activate the downtown and bring public life back into the downtown. So we led the development of the proposal,
mm,
brought in the partners and the community partnerships, and basically project managed that piece so that there wasn't a client per se, but although we do work like that sometimes directly with
mm,
municipalities,
yeah.
this was actually a funding opportunity that we were able to jump on.
Mm. And Amanda, tell me, you work a lot with partnerships and so on. What are, let's say, like the three factors that make a partnership really successful and contribute to impact?
Oh, that's such a good question.
Because we hear a lot, like
Yeah.
collaboration, partnering, and so on. Sometimes, as you mentioned now, like it's a lot of talking. But like, if you can give us more like something solid that we can maybe work on when we do partnerships.
Yeah. Uh, I think that one of the things that I've learned a lot through developing partnerships is that you really need to build in time for mapping out really clear roles and responsibilities. It sounds really boring,
No, but
but
tell
it's
us.
really important. Um, at the front end of a project. So this Brampton one as a case example, um, you know, there was this funding opportunity, and the business improvement area was really interested in doing a project. So was the municipality, and it just made sense. They wanted to do a lot of sort of live music programming, and we wanted to also work on the laneway. And ultimately, through a lot of conversations at the
Mm.
beginning about whether we would do two different proposals or we would do one big
Ah,
one, um, you know, we had a really clear understanding that the broader goal was the same, that there was a real need to activate the downtown,
yeah.
sort of provide some fun social opportunities for people to come out and be
Mm.
outside and visit the downtown, meet each other. And um, I think ultimately it's about at those conversations at the beginning, understanding what that big goal is and how each of the partners can help work
Mm.
together on having even a bigger impact. Because ultimately, from the public's point of view, the person experiencing the activation or the
Yeah.
program,
Yeah.
they don't care if it's 880
No,
cities or
no,
the
of course.
BIA or the
Exactly.
city.
Yeah. Yeah,
They
exactly.
just know it's a cool public space and they want to be a part of
Yeah.
it.
This
So,
is the how to say, one of the biggest problems that I see. Like, people care so much about like the name of section or organization or the team, but actually people there just for the experience. They don't really care about like which
yeah,
section or manager or division or organization is behind this. Like, they don't really focus on this.
exactly. Yeah, and I think if you start to take yourself and your organizational, like, we have an organizational mission,
Yeah.
obviously this connected to our mission, so it made sense, but, ultimately it's in service to the public and a
Mm,
public good and these bigger goals around sustainable, healthy, equitable cities, then it becomes kind of like a no-brainer that partnership is needed. It's not just a
mm,
good thing. It's You can't really do it well without it. And I
yeah.
think that is an important sort of mindset to go
Mm,
into any of these sort of placemaking processes is that,
yeah.
it's not. it's putting egos aside a bit, and then just also saying, "This is not really about me or 880, this is about this broader goal," and, it does take time and a lot of conversations
Mm.
and, those sort of more boring things around partnership agreements, like who's doing what. But it also is a lot of flexibility and trust,
Mm,
and I think
mm.
if you come in with this sort of authentic desire to, and people can tell if you're coming in with an authentic desire to
Yeah,
actually do something good in the community, then I think you're off to a really good start.
yeah. How do you think that we can build more trust, like even before we sign paper and contracts and so on? Because usually, with some organization, like I feel that they try like to just protect themselves as much as possible, and uh, like leaving zero space for building a trust and being a bit flexible and okay, let's do this together. We are on the same side. It's like a lot of like they already creating a kind of gap or conflict, or like this space between themselves and other partners.
Yeah, I mean, I think trust, in my experience, is built through action and
Mm,
doing things and showing up, like really showing up. Um, and and there is always, I think, at the beginning of a process, a bit of a leap of faith. And trust is something that's sort of earned over time.
mm,
Um, but if you're able to get sort of that leap of faith at the beginning, through a pretty clear vision on where you want to go, then you can build that trust through actually really following
yeah.
through. I mean, it sounds really cliche, but it honestly, I have not seen how you can
Mm,
build trust without actually taking action.
mm,
And actually, I've seen the exact opposite happen, where trust is even further eroded when there's a lot of um, talking or even like engagement without follow through, and that is basically, you know, I think communities are very forgiving if you follow through and you miss the mark a bit, um,
mm,
then less forgiving than if you don't follow through at all or there's no sort of follow up. So I am of the mind that you got to follow through. It might not be
yeah.
perfect. It might not even be exactly what the community wants, but taking action and taking a more sort of iterative approach is how we're going to learn how to sort of build these new
Mm,
collaborative infrastructures in a way,
yeah.
these new relationships that are needed.
Do you feel that building a relationship and partnership with a small organization easier than big organization, or how is your experience? Or not really, there is nothing, like you don't see a pattern.
I think sometimes, so municipalities, in my experience, and cities are not always built um, in a way, or their systems are not built in a way that really facilitate partnership and
Mm.
collaboration. So that's been my experience. So there's a little bit of like
Yeah.
pulling along. Um, but ultimately, I do think it comes down to the people, like
Mm.
building relationship. It's very relational and very
Yeah.
interpersonal in my experience. Like if you um meet, it comes down to the actual core project team. Do they trust each other, even if they're coming from different organizations? If one's like a city planner and another one's a business improvement executive director and another is like a placemaking um, consultant, I think it really ultimately comes down to that core team really trusting each other and feeling
Mm.
aligned, and it becomes, then you start to break away from these bigger institutional challenges that inevitably are there. They're always there. I mean, that's why often city departments are created to regulate and
Mm.
keep people
Yeah.
safe. They're not always created to foster facilitation and collaboration, but there's ways around it. And I think ultimately getting champions inside
Mm.
those departments has been effective for us to do the kinds of transformative
Yeah.
projects that we've done.
Mm. And like for this kind of project, you don't go like with focus on 880. Like I know you go with the focus on making cities for all people, but it's not like you drive an agenda that okay, we should only focus on children and seniors.
Absolutely. We always, as part of our work approach and our sort of commitment to equity, any of our projects, it's absolutely we engage with children and older adults
Okay,
as
so
like
you
a
yeah,
standard.
yeah, yeah.
And then in addition to that, we sort of do
Mm,
the mapping of assets and the
mm,
that kind of context assessment of what are the other priority groups or targeted groups that are currently underrepresented or not currently sort of engaged in these kinds of placemaking projects, and who has sort of the potentially most to gain, who's being left out. So again, we start always with the 880, but then
mm.
really think about
Yeah,
this broader context of who else is not being really served through this process. So it could be
yeah.
youth, it could be adolescents. As I mentioned with Brampton, it was specific cultural communities. We've engaged with people with disabilities. With Brampton, there was a real interest in, because of the aging population as well, around dementia friendly spaces. So, how can design actually, the design even of the temporary installation,
Mm,
demonstrate
yeah,
principles that support dementia friendly spaces, age
mm,
friendly spaces?
yeah. Do you, Amanda, do you work in projects now or no, you're just like leading the organization?
Oh, I would love to jump in on projects when I can. I can't
Okay.
help it. But, no, I mean, as, executive director, I have a lot of sort of, responsibilities of, we're a small team, but still there's things like
Yeah.
HR and finance and
Mm,
reporting to
mm.
my board and, some of the external relations and being a spokesperson like I am today. But I do really like to stay close to the work. I think it makes me better at my job. So I
Yeah.
will jump in and, for Brampton, I was on the weekend, painting in the heat, the mural, and I get a lot out of talking to people, and
Mm,
I love seeing people sort of experience in the space, especially while we're transforming it or even after
mm.
transformation. I love those moments where people sort of stop and take a look and go, "Oh, what's going on here? Like, what is this about?
Yeah,
Oh, isn't
exactly.
that interesting?
Mm,
Tell me more." So, and anyway, I do like jumping in on projects, but we have wonderful project managers that really lead, and they are
yeah.
the stars of those wonderful projects. So Gia Benny was the PM on the Brampton project, and she did a wonderful job.
Mm.
I just
Shout
jumped
out.
in.
Yeah.
It,
Shout out to the team. I think it's very important that, like, let's say people in the leading position stay in touch with some project, even if not like 100% of their time, but at least like from time to time, just to be in touch with what's happening on the ground and not like start to fly away and getting into visions and concepts, and they're not really in touch with the reality. So it's really good that you're telling you're also like taking some part of project like from time to time.
yeah, I like it. I mean, and also we're a small team, so if someone is like sick or something
Yeah.
happens or they can't do it, we all it's all hands on deck for anything. Anyone who's worked in a nonprofit
Mm.
before, um it's quite um everybody does a little bit of everything,
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
picking up the coffee and donuts to to actually thinking through the design elements,
Yeah.
to managing budgets. I think that's what makes this work exciting and fun.
Mm. Mm. And so this is the one type of projects that you do in 80 cities. And you have also like other kind of what is called activities like the resource hub.
Yes. Yeah, we have a lot of so there's a number of different ways that we work with cities and to achieve our or advance, I should say, our mission of igniting action in cities. So a lot of it is producing sort of resources and toolkits. And one of the things I think has been wonderful about working with 880 cities and leading this organization is providing thought leadership on some pressing issues. So
Mm.
we have a lot of open access resources on our website. Anyone can check it out around, innovative engagement or what we call unconventional engagement. How to engage in a different way, in a more playful way. Not just the public consultation that asks people to come to a meeting at City Hall. What are
Mm.
some innovative ways to engage more diverse members of the community in city building, because I think that that's such an important aspect of being able to improve our cities. So there's open source resources. We've done uh, thought leadership in terms of addressing homelessness in parks. We've done creating parks and public spaces for all ages. Documents on winter placemaking. Uh, we did a document on winter placemaking and realized there wasn't really even a definition about winter
Mm.
placemaking
Yeah.
and the unique conditions of how winter can be an asset to be leveraged from a placemaking perspective. So yeah, we do a lot of this sort of uh, thought leadership and open source resources so that folks from anywhere
Yeah.
can find it and start initiating some of these conversations and use some of the inspiration from the case studies.
Mm. Really interesting, and I love like I started to read because before I didn't know like they were open source. So now I started like slowly to take part of different reports you publish. But tell me, who is financing this kind of activity?
Yeah. So it comes from a lot of different places.
Mm?
So the work that we did on winter placemaking and addressing homelessness in parks and the Parks and Public Spaces Guide was funded through a wonderful partnership with AARP, which is a US based organization. They've uh, their members are folks aged 55 plus, and
Wow.
it's a
Mm.
huge sort of
Mm.
member
Mm.
based organization, but they have a whole unit focused on livable communities and
Yeah.
age-friendly communities. So we've had a wonderful collaboration with them over the last 6 years, where we're producing some of these
Mm.
open source documents. We just did one on community gardens,
Yeah.
which we're
Yeah.
really excited
Amazing.
about. And we also provide technical assistance. So each of the state offices across the U.S. Um, uh, can connect with us around if they're doing a placemaking project and they need some support. So yeah, that's a bit of a partnership on some of the thought leadership, but then we also provide
Mm.
consulting services through that partnership. We've received grants from, foundations like many other nonprofits for
Yeah.
some of our larger programs or multi-year programs. We also receive funding through like direct service to
Okay.
municipalities,
Yeah.
so we can be like advisors and
Yeah.
and we get funding that way as well. It's a mix.
Is it easy to get funding from? Do you call it not the donation from like foundations? Is it easy to like let's say if I create an organization also working with cities and making cities for people, is it easy for me to get to finance this or no? I also need to do some kind of application and it's not like guaranteed that I will get money.
Yeah, in my experience, it's never easy. It's a lot of it's a lot of work. Um, Foundations, we've had wonderful partnerships with foundations, both in the U.S. and Canada, but
Mhm.
it's a process. It's usually an open call for
Yeah.
applications. There's an open competition,
Mm.
and there's a lot of sort of follow up and reporting
Yeah.
requirements, which is why, having a really strong also administrative team. I have a wonderful manager of finance who helps with all the financial pieces.
Yeah.
So it's not just project delivery. It's, things like performance metrics and budget reporting,
Mm.
um, to make sure that not just the project is successful, but we're managing all the aspects of the operations very
Yeah.
well.
Mm. So tell us, how do we create uh, spaces and cities for 8 and 80s? So what should we
Yeah,
think about?
great question. So we talk about the three rights, which helps like our guideposts kind of
Mm.
for you know uh, demonstrating what an 880 city is. So it's really about reclaiming the right to the city for everyone. And those three rights are the right to mobility. So everyone should be able to move freely and
Mm.
comfortably in their city by walking or biking or using public transit. And again, we talk about walking, biking, and transit because that connects to our vision on sustainability. um, the first right is the right to mobility. The second right is the right to public space. Everyone should feel safe and
Mm.
comfortable and have a great, not just a public space, a great, wonderful, fantastic, quality
Yeah.
public space that they can, get to in their neighborhood easily, and where they can feel a sense of belonging and connection. So that's the second right. And the third right is the right to participate. Everyone should have the right to participate in city building processes that affect them. And that means, how do we design our systems and our
Mm.
approaches and a way that actually really invites and authentically invites people to participate in how their city will take shape. And that doesn't mean that everyone is going to participate in the same way. It could be even just by being present in the space
Mm.
is a kind of form of participation, because placemaking is happening all the time. We
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
we don't dictate placemaking. People are shaping space all the time, and the more that people are
Mm.
in public space and engaging in public space, we think that this is a really central part of advancing those sustainability, equity, and health goals
Mm.
that we have.
Yeah. And through your work with different projects in the many years, what mistakes do we do as expert when we start like working with community engagement processes or activities as a professionals, when we go to communities?
Yeah, I think we often come with a lot of jargon, which is not great. We come with a lot of sort of technical pieces. Um, I've been to a lot of public consultation meetings where you're looking at these very technical drawings and you see members looking going, what,
What
how
is
do I
this?
interact with this? Or it can be very intimidating,
Mm. Mm.
which I understand. Like I trained as an urban planner. I have my master's in urban planning. Those drawings intimidate me too. Not everybody thinks in plan view as well. Like
Yeah.
people, um you know I that's partly why, we are really trying to bring the drawing into real life through
Mm.
some of our
Mm.
tactical approaches, because it's one thing for someone to give an opinion or engage with a concept on paper, um, and it can be very hard to sort of uh, you're not really attached to it. It's almost
Yeah.
like you're disembodied from the piece. But when you're in the public space, if we're doing
Mm.
an open street where the street's
Yeah.
open to people and closed to cars, and people can kind of look around and see what the street feels like without motor vehicle traffic,
Yeah.
that is much more an exciting piece of feedback that you get from folks, even if they don't like it. Like it's more connected. They're like in real
Mm.
time, um, telling you what they think about the
Yeah.
the the program and the intervention.
Mm.
So I think, yeah, we often make the mistake of asking questions in a very sort of disconnected way
Way.
um, to folks who might not be. I mean, I'm thinking about placemaking all the time. I'm sure you are too. Most people are not, but if they're
True.
in the space and they are experiencing it, they can give you really great
Mm,
feedback
mm.
on what's working and what's not.
Do you think that digital tools will help us getting closer or showing what we are imagining and so on? Because, like, usually, even in Sweden, what I see is mostly like the traditional way of doing community engagement, like, let's say, images, printing images, and normal tools, like not so much digital way of doing this. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's merit in using virtual and using digital tools, but I think that we do a disservice by thinking that it can be replaced
Mm,
by the in-person engagement and having real sort of dialogue
yeah.
and conversation and tangible experience in the space. So it's not a one-to-one. Like, I think
Mm,
it's useful and helpful. I think digital communications tools are amazing. A lot of
yeah.
our, I think one of the things that we found to be really effective is to use like social media and some of these digital platforms to share stories of impact and
Mm,
inspire and sometimes even bring more people in to a process. Um, but yeah, I'm old school. I like the in
like,
person.
yeah, meeting and talking and feeling
Mhm.
the energy.
Yeah,
Yeah. But I see you're focusing a lot on communication. And also, like, I guess, or I believe it's a strong part of what we do, especially these long processes that we should communicate what we are doing.
absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a big part where um, sometimes projects don't succeed because of a failure of communication.
Mm, mm,
And I think communication from not just saying what you want to say, but
mm,
listening is a big part of communication. I think we
mm.
forget that. Active listening. Um, and I think when we really listen, we're able to ask much better questions.
Yeah. And now we are touched on different topics, like within making cities for people. So, if I ask you this question, what skills should we, as let's say, planners or architects working with this kind of project, develop?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest skill needed right now, where there's, I think, a lot of um, grief of what we've just gone through with the pandemic.
Mm,
And it's often coming through as sometimes even aggression. I think we really need empathy and focus on trying to understand people and where they're coming from and their motivation, like a real interest in understanding. Um, and I think that that will help with a lot of these bigger conversations on the sort of future around the climate transition,
mm,
around rising inequality, around rising conflict and tension. Like I think there's a real need for empathy and listening. Again, I know it sounds cheesy, but I do think ultimately um, most successful work that we've done has been through really good relationships with
mm,
people. And I think people will show up in really exciting, fantastic ways when they
yeah.
feel that sense of purpose and that sense of inspiration, and that they are understood. Their motivations are understood.
Mm. And Amanda, how do we develop these skills? What can we do, like, to get better? Do you have any advice for us?
um, Practice listening. I mean, I
Mhm.
think and this is very 880, one of the things that you could do, and this is a really great starting point for anyone, is really listen to children and
Mm.
elders.
Okay.
Have some conversations. I think one of the beautiful things of doing engagement with children and elders is they will tell you exactly how they feel.
Yeah. Without any filters and so.
Yeah. And so that is my yeah, challenge to everyone
Mm.
is please
Mm.
have some really good conversations, listen to children's ideas and elders' ideas. They have so much to share and to contribute.
Yeah.
And I think in a very capitalist focused society where we really don't think
Mm.
about the non productive members of society, uh, that starting there is a really great point a really great starting
Yeah.
point to building that empathy and that understanding
Mm.
of the future cities that we need.
That's so true. And if we go back to 880, what challenges do you face as an organization?
Oh, I think it's the usual ones of we're constantly, you know, looking for funding.
Yeah.
That's always, as
Mm. Mm.
ED, that's a big part of my role is finding really good
Mm.
funding and sustainable funding. So we have really great, it's very easy to find project funding. It's less easy to find sort of multi year funding
Yeah.
where you're
Yeah.
able to just take some breathing room,
Exactly.
and build some of the core. So that's
Mm.
always a challenge, but one that I've been here for 5 years as ED, but been with the organization for 17 years, and we still are here,
Yeah.
even during the pandemic, where a big part of our work just had to stop. So I feel like
Uh,
we're ready for the next challenge,
yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah. And what is the next step for 880s?
Yeah, we're gonna continue really pushing our mission to ignite action and
Mm.
challenge the status quo so that we can create healthier, more equitable, and sustainable cities. That is, we're going to constantly, we are very comfortable being the disruptors and the sort of first.
Yeah.
I think I said this in our annual report for 2022. We often have this title of first ever school street, first
Mm.
ever
Yeah.
open street, first ever, laneway transformation in the city. We're really comfortable doing that and being like the ones that are pushing
Yeah.
new things forward. And with innovation, we know there's risks, and we accept that.
Yeah.
And so for us, we're going to keep pushing, and we're very excited that the broader conversations on placemaking and equitable cities have really just been so strengthened, by many different parties and
Mm.
partners. I feel like when we first started this work 17 years ago,
Yeah.
um, the story that I shared, Gil and I, like it just the level of the conversation was very
Mm.
different.
Yeah.
And so we're excited about that. So we're going to keep
Yeah.
really, really poking
Uh,
away at it.
do you have like a dream? What kind of a project that you want to do, like the first ever something? Is there any specific project that you want to do first ever?
Oh man, we've done a few of them already. I think, one of the first evers that we did in Toronto was a complete street makeover with our friends at Better Block,
Mm.
where we transformed one block of a commercial corridor into an actual like complete street that really exemplified the city's
Yeah.
Vision Zero commitment.
Mm.
Um, and since then, it's led to actual investment
Yeah.
in better cycling infrastructure and expanded pedestrian space. I would love to do more of those because it just had such, if you can imagine, it's one of the biggest commercial corridors in, I think, North America, the Danforth
Mm. Yeah.
street, and it was probably one of the most exhilarating and exhausting projects I've worked on. And it took us 1 year to get approval to do it. It was that much back and
Wow.
forth through
Yeah.
municipal sort of process.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, like, I think stubbornness and desire to just get it done,
Yeah.
won through. Uh, and now it's sort of created a model,
Mm,
where there's a bit more interest in doing these kinds of, pop-up demonstrations.
mm,
And so, yeah, my I would love to do more of those. And then the school streets, which is basically, if you're familiar with those, closing the street directly
yeah.
in front of schools.
Yeah.
Um, we did the first ever in 2019, in Toronto, and since then we've had like 4 or 5 municipalities really take the concept and run with
Yeah.
it. So my big vision, because of that 880,
Mm,
mindset, is that, cars in front of schools will really just not be something that people accept anymore. Like,
true.
it just
True.
doesn't make sense from
Yeah.
a health and safety of children
Mm,
and caregivers from 8 to 80,
yeah.
and beyond.
So you didn't answer my question exactly. Like, what is your next first ever? You should do something like completely new because what you mentioned you already did. So tell
Right.
me about
More of that.
no, no, no,
um,
something like first ever, something
first
new. Yeah.
First ever, open street in North America that's more than, um, 15 kilometers. That would be great
Okay. Yeah.
too. Because in North America, we've had a real challenge of opening the streets,
Mm, mm,
uh, like the Bogota model, the Ciclovia,
yeah.
which we've been, and in Guadalajara, they have a great program as well. And we've tried to bring it to North America, with mixed success,
Yeah.
and it's usually much smaller scale. So yeah, that would be first
Mm.
ever, to answer your question, as a more bold ambition.
Yeah. No, but really, really good job. What you do, what you produce as open source, I really appreciate it, and many people also appreciate what you produce. So shout out to you and to the team also.
Thank
And
you.
I'm happy that now I have more details about 880s and what you do, what kind of project you work with. And now we're in the second part of the episode, which is more about you.
Okay,
Are you ready?
I'm ready. Yeah.
So, Amanda, what gives you energy and motivates you to do what you do?
I think my children really do. I
Mm,
have 3 kids. I you know, they have a lot of energy, and they they give me energy when I'm able to sort of share things that I do, and
mm,
also just think about the, future cities that they're gonna live in. That gives me that gives me
yeah,
energy.
yeah. And as a executive director, um, what challenges you face, like personally?
I think always it's, time management. There's
Okay.
only so much time in the day, and I have many things that I want to do.
Mm.
I'm a person that really loves my plate full of things. Um, so yeah, I think it's just really doing the work of prioritizing the
Yeah.
right focusing efforts on the right thing.
Mm.
Um, that's my biggest challenge.
Time management.
Yeah, there needs to be 28 hours in a day to do all the things I want to do.
Yeah. So, mention something you did in your career and you're very proud of, and something you did and you regret. Now, like when you're looking back, you regret that you did this.
Yeah, I'm really proud of, um helping create this 880 concept,
Mm,
because when I think back, before Gil and I created it, it didn't exist. And now there is something that
Yeah.
exists out there that people use. Like even I see folks send me pictures of their in urban planning 101 classes that they're talking
Mm.
about the 880 approach or
Yeah.
880 principles. And that to me is always really great because, it didn't exist before and now
No.
it does. And it's a bit of a legacy that will stay, this concept and this thinking.
Mm.
Um,
In Sweden, we are talking a lot about it as well.
oh, really?
Yeah, yeah,
Great.
yeah.
See,
A
we
lot.
we
We
can't always
refer a
track
lot
it.
to it, like do like 880s. You know about the 880s, think like 880s and so on. So good
I
job.
love that. I love hearing that because
Yeah.
it wasn't a thing before.
No, no,
Like this
no,
you
no.
created we created it
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it's now helping sort of frame conversations
Mm.
about the city. So I'm really proud of that.
Yeah.
Uh things that I regret. I mean, there's lots, I'm sure. I mean, I've made many mistakes in my career. But I really try to I don't think I would ever change the mistakes because I
Mm.
learned a lot
Yeah.
from the mistakes. And I talk to my kids a lot about this, so I better walk
Good.
the talk because I'm
Mm. Yeah.
always telling them mistakes are the best way of
Mm.
learning, and you learn more and
Yeah.
remember the mistakes more than you remember the successes.
Mm. Mm.
Um, so yeah, I try to take a very, you know, not so much regrets, but mistakes that I've learned from, and mostly it comes from, I would say the ones that stick with me the most are the ones where I've unintentionally hurt someone
Mm.
through, actions or words. And so there's a lot more, uh, I think, as I've gotten older, really being more intentional with my words and with
Yeah.
going back to that, really trying to understand people's motivations and really try to
Mm.
understand where they're coming from before you jump to your own sort of conclusions or assessments. So yeah, those are the ones that stick with me. I don't like hurting people.
Mm. Mm.
Uh, and
Yeah.
yeah, mistakes are always made. We are
Of course, we are
imperfect.
human.
We're
Yeah.
human. We have biases,
Yeah. Yeah.
and those things are good learning moments. Though I wouldn't
Yeah.
change them.
I agree with you. Like, it's fine doing mistakes so far you don't harm people or nature and so on. And you should really learn so you don't do it again. I mean, it's pointless if you just like do the same mistake over and over again. But if you really learn so you avoid it, doing it, and maybe do better, so then it's like the perfect way of learning.
Yeah, and
Mm.
it stays. You don't forget those.
No, no. How is your leadership style? How do you lead the organization?
um, I
Like,
think,
what is important for you?
yeah, I think my leadership style is pretty focused on outcomes, I would say.
Yeah.
And I've been someone who's been generally pretty results oriented and outcomes oriented. I will say that I'm learning better how to focus more and appreciate more process of
Mm.
getting to the result. So that's a big kind of like learning
Yeah.
journey for
Yeah.
me. But I think my leadership style is pretty collaborative. It better be. I mean, we talk a lot about collaboration. And if I was like authoritarian, I don't think it would make a lot of sense for me to be espousing all these principles around
Mm, mm.
collaboration
Yeah.
with our city partners. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's very collaborative, and I think, yeah, ultimately, I think there's also been better. I've learned a lot about how to have really clear strategic goals.
Mm,
Again, it
mm.
sounds boring, but like really, how do we actually have a clear strategy as an organization, and how do we align our project activities and our
Mm.
operations and our, um, not just talking about equity and delivering equitable projects, but how do we
Ah.
really embody equity as an organization? And
Mm, mm.
that's been also something I'm proud of and part of my leadership journey.
Yeah. How was your reaction when they told you that you're going to be the executive director? Because you were a project manager?
Yeah, well, I started as a project manager, and then I had, you know, then I was director of strategic planning for a little while, and then I had three babies. So through three
Yeah.
maternity leaves. So in Canada, we have um, 1 year for maternity leave. So it wasn't consistent 17 years,
Yeah.
but I've been involved. And then even when the kids were very young, I was sort of advising, but not
Mm.
full time.
Yeah.
And so when the opportunity came for me to step in as executive director, my son, my youngest, was still quite young. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it, but I was like, no, you have to take this opportunity when it comes.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So, yeah, my son was still like just less than a year old. And I jumped into it and I have no regrets about it.
Cool, cool.
Absolutely. It's been such a wild and
Y-
wonderful ride.
Yeah, yeah. Amazing. And can you tell us about like your daily routine? When do you wake up? What do you do? You know?
Sure. Might be a bit scary. I wake up early. I wake up at like 6, which isn't
Okay.
like crazy early, but
Yeah.
today I woke up very early to do this podcast. So sometimes I do wake up
Thank you.
even earlier, depending on if there are meetings or activities that I'm doing with partners in different time zones.
Mm,
But generally speaking, I wake up around 6. I'm getting 3 kids out the door,
mm.
and along with my partner, of course. And they're pretty self-sufficient now, so they can get out the
Cool.
door on their own.
Good for you.
And then I spend usually I do spend most of my working day, like 9 to 5,
Mm,
in a lot of meetings, both virtual,
yeah.
and now happy that some of them are returning in person.
Mm.
And then my second shift often starts after the workday, where I'm catching up on emails and
Okay.
following
Yeah.
through on some of the work that
Mm.
I said I would do in the meeting.
Yeah.
So it's a long day, but again,
Yeah.
I'm a big girl. I make this choice. I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
the work. I do get a lot out of it, and I have lots of energy for it because I'm very passionate about it.
Mm, mm. So, like, is there any specific moment during the day that you just like close down the laptop and the phone, and then it's like, let's say, family time, or no? It's like it's there, it's open, and you're checking. The thing is that you're passionate about what you work with, which is like not a big problem for you. You're enjoying it.
Yeah.
It's not like I hate this job. I just want to be like a 5 afternoon, so I go out and that's it.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, there is a time. So when the kids get home from school, so I would say between 4 o'clock and 6 o'clock, I usually have the computer closed down, the laptop
Yeah.
closed down, um, and it's dinner. We do really
Mm,
try to have dinner together as a family every
yeah.
night, um, except for the nights where it's some sort of activity. My my son plays soccer, so sometimes that interferes with the family dinner.
Yeah.
But we do at least every every weekend we have family dinner, and then at least 3 days a week we're together at the dinner table. I grew up like that. I love
Yeah.
having that. I think it's a really important time for us to connect,
Mm.
and we make it a time in our day to talk to each other, make eye
Yeah.
contact, and understand what's going on in each of our lives.
Yeah. And do you have time for your hobbies?
Yeah, well, my hobbies are really reading. riding my bicycle, which I love.
Nice.
It is drinking coffee, cooking. I
Yeah,
love
yeah, yeah.
cooking. So, yeah, I have time for all those things. I'm not at like I don't have a long list of hobbies,
Mm-mm.
but yeah, I really do love cooking. Saturday and Sunday I'm in the kitchen a lot with the kids.
Amazing. So, Amanda, before we go to the last section of this episode, if you choose another profession to work with than the one you have now, working with city development and so on, what will you choose?
Yeah, it's a great question. Actually started my I told you I was interested in climate activism, and I did biology actually in my
Mm,
undergrad. And I was very interested in sort of plant science and urban forestry. And then I got the bug around cities and sustainability and felt like, oh, I have to, if we're going to have an impact, we really
yeah.
need to focus on city development.
Mm-mm.
But I still love that the um, the subject of biology. I think I would probably be a nature conservation scientist out
Mm, yeah.
doing that kind of thing. And then my other sort of potential other job would be a bread maker. I love making bread. I would like make
Wow.
bread.
That's amazing.
I love to eat bread. I love to make
And
bread.
make a bread.
That's one other potential
Yeah.
job I would do.
Yeah. Fantastic. So now we are in the last section of this episode and three questions. The first one is about you giving a message to yourself.
Yes. Um, I think my message to myself is remember to be present.
Mm. With a family or with work colleagues or
Everyone,
everyone.
just yeah, turn your internal monologue off and be present with the person or thing
Yeah.
that you're doing. Yeah.
And the next question is about you giving three takeaway messages to our listener.
Okay, great. The first one I think is think about I'll do the 880. Think about an 8-year-old that you love and care about. Think about an 8-year-old that
Mm.
was in your life. What would you do differently in your city with those two people in mind as they're living in the city or navigating the city or moving within your city or community? You know, we work not just in cities, but in small towns and communities. So think about the 880.
Yeah.
That's my first message. The second is something that I've said sort of throughout the interview is really try to understand people and their motivations.
Mm.
Come to any new interaction with a desire to understand and
Yeah.
not always coming with your own agenda. Um, and then third, I would say don't be afraid of conflict. I think that's something I've learned as
Mm.
well. I think I grew up um, with this idea that conflict is bad. It's not. And I think there's really actually my 13-year-old daughter taught me the term healthy conflict, mom. This is healthy conflict.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And it's so true.
Yeah.
And I think it really it's very relatable across
Mm.
family and work. Um, you know, I often say I will take the angry person coming to a community meeting any
Mm.
day
Yeah.
because they're showing up and they're showing that they care.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think, you know, don't be afraid of conflict is my third message.
Amazing. And the last question in this episode is going to be you asking it. So, not me. Now it's your turn to ask the final question.
Ooh, is it to you or to
It's gonna
just in
be to me
general?
and to our listeners.
Okay.
And I will put it like on Spotify so people can also like answer if they want.
Okay. Um How can we better leverage public space for better cities?
Mm, uh, Good question. And big one also. But
One I think about a lot,
yeah,
and I'm curious to hear what others think.
yeah. So, Amanda, thank you so much for giving your valuable time to
Thank
record
you.
the podcast, also to wake up early to do this as well. So I really appreciate it.
Oh, I so appreciate the conversation. Thank you so much for your wonderful questions, and it's been lovely, lovely chatting with you.
Yeah, and we keep in touch.
Good.